This information is not intended to provide diagnosis, treatment, or medical advice. Products, services, information, and other content provided in this broadcast, including information that may be provided in this broadcast directly or by linking to third-party websites, are provided for informational purposes only. Please consult with a physician or other healthcare professional regarding any medical or health-related diagnosis or treatment options. Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Dezi Koster, divinely gifted Trivedi healer, speaker, visionary, and scientist. Let me tell you a little bit about Dezi. Dezi is a Trivedi healer who is committed to applying her gift of harnessing, transmitting, and infusing life force energy to living organisms and non-living materials anywhere in the world through her thought intention to transform and optimize the potential of their inherent nature. Her lifelong mission has been to help people attain optimal health and wellness for themselves as an individual, for their career and business, for their family and community, and for the environment in which we live. I want to stop now and say hello to Dezi Koster. How are you today?
Hi, Tammy. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great. Today I wanted to get right into our topic, and women, you definitely want to get a little bit closer to the computer, to your phone, to your podcast player, whatever it is, because Dezi is going to be talking more about, the things that we call women's issues,
Women's business.
which is everything you ever wanted to know. Well, not everything, but a lot of things about menstrual cycle disorders. And I don't know about you, but I know many people who, over the lifetime of being a woman, you go through so many things. What is it? It's age 12 until you're 55 or 60 years old. So it's a long time that you have this situation. And I know when I was a young girl, we did not talk about these issues. So it's kind of exciting to be able to talk about the women's health, because it's part of our lives. So Dezi, tell me more about this issue, and what are some of the disorders that we're going to be discussing?
Absolutely. So the thing about us as women is, of course, one of the incredible gifts of life is the fact that we actually have the ability to begin menstruating, and we have the ability to be able to create life. This is really a huge gift. For some women, once they start their menstrual cycle, it can be pretty much that they don't even notice. It's regular. Everything's under control. For other women, they have a lot of different issues, anything from incredibly painful menstrual cycle, irregular menstrual cycle. They can have very heavy bleeding. Also things like migraines and headaches. Some women break out in huge types of acne and skin problems. And then, of course, PMS. As a woman, I'm sure pretty much, statistics show about 90% of women go through premenstrual syndrome, or, like the symptoms that occur just prior to getting our menstrual cycle. And this can be anything from mood imbalances or swings. It can be through changes in needing to eat more or eat less. Even things like our balance can change, our energy levels can change. We can become very fatigued, or we can have a huge surge of energy just before, and then we become more tired and weak when they come on. So there are a lot of different things that women experience as part of this. And as we go through our life, on average, like you said, women start menstruating roughly around 12 years of age, and then go through menopause by the time they're at 58 or just prior to that. And of course, those vary because some people start later. Some girls start when they're 14, 15, 16. Some women stop their stop menstruating early on. And, when I actually did my thesis when I was at university doing my degree, I did my thesis on the menopause. And one of the women that participated in my study, her mother went through menopause at 28, which is incredibly young. That's when women are still generally having children. And she went through menopause by the time she was 35. Generally, our years of menstruation is similar to what our mother is or what our siblings, our sisters are. So generally, if they go through, they last a certain amount of time, we often will as well. So we're looking at around 40 years of our life, which is a lifetime, really, to have this ability to reproduce life. And what I wanted to address was, what are some of the things that might be coming up for you, including the different taboos around this issue as well. I know I actually wrote a blog about this in my mother's day. When my mum was growing up, she didn't even know. She wasn't educated. She didn't even know anything about menstruation whatsoever. One day she went to school, and this was when she was 12 years of age, and she started bleeding, and she thought, oh my God, I'm dying. And luckily, there was a girl at her school that obviously had gone through the same thing, we all do. And, she quickly educated her and said, hey, you're not dying. You're not dying, girl. But just to let her know that, this is a natural, healthy, normal part of life, and now you're a woman. And I was very grateful because my mum, in her wisdom, what she did with me at a young age, I was only 7, but at 7 years of age, what she did was she educated me about, okay, this is what's going to be happening. This is what you need to expect. And that was great because when we educate our girls about what to expect, then it's something that it's something that they have an awareness about. It's not something they need to be frightened about. It's not something that they need to be upset about, but they know this is just a normal, healthy part of their life. And also to be aware that there might be times when they feel that they need extra rest, or that they might find their body actually is off balance. One of the things that can happen when we start the beginning of the menstrual cycle, the ligaments in the body relax a little bit. It's almost preparing, you're not going to have a baby, but of course, if we go full term of a pregnancy, what happens is just prior to having the baby, everything loosens up. All the muscles and ligaments start opening up so that you can have a normal childbirth. And so around the time of when we menstruate, there is a softening of the ligaments as well. And that's why sometimes we seem like we're extra clumsy around that time. A lot of people don't realize that. Some women are not. But that's something to be aware of. If you're finding that you seem to be a little bit more, that's can be part of it as well. So these are the things I wanted to address and look at, some of the main things that women experience, including the irregular periods, heavy periods, or even loss. Some women go through stages when they don't have the menstrual cycle, whatever. And that's something that, I went through myself. So I just thought I'd, be good to share something like that with you.
Well, that would be really great if you could share some of these things, because everything you've said, it's like every woman is different.
Yes.
But many women have experienced some of the same things.
Yeah.
And, with ranging from, hey, where'd it go? Am I pregnant? No, you're not. Well, why? Is it irregular? Or maybe the cramps. I remember my sister used to constantly complain that she really had severe cramps, so much so that I think she missed school every month because the pain was so bad. And I personally, I didn't have that issue. So obviously, even though we were sisters, we had different experiences. So yeah, that actually is a really good thing. If you can talk about, again, some of the common disorders, and you've already mentioned some, and then I think my favorite part of our conversation will be when you actually start talking about, well, so what can we do about it? You know, so
about this, yes, because it definitely is
easier time, because like you said, if this is part of our lives for 40 years
40
or
years.
more, 40 or 50 years or more, you certainly want to know that it is natural, but at the same time, you want to know, well, when isn't it normal and natural? Because there are some things that do happen. So yeah, go ahead and just, I'll give you the leeway to start explaining this.
So one of the areas that women have issues with is the dysmenorrhea, which is the cramping. And this can be anything from mild twingy pain to really severe cramping. And growing up, I like your sister, I went through stages where I was in agony, and I had to actually I had some medication prescribed by my doctor. They weren't kind of really strong, but they were still some analgesic type things, because without them, I couldn't get out of bed sometimes because it was just so bad. As soon as I took them, the pain would go away. And by the second day, or certainly by the third day, it was completely gone. Often women experience that pain, that severe cramping, on their first day. And, but, is that normal or necessary? For some women, it can be part of what it's like for their menstrual cycle. But do you have to suffer through it? No. I know, for example, with some women, to help them with that severe cramping, they put them on the pill. Often the hormonal pill can smooth out the issue with pain. So that's one way. I'm going to talk about something that is an alternative way a little bit later. But this is something, there's that, of course, there's things like analgesics. But, like we said, you've got 40 years. If you've got 40 years of going through this, you don't want to have to deal with something like this every month. If there's something that can help you, so it's not something that occurs monthly, then that would be really good. What can happen too is, as we get older, into their 20s, 30s, these type of issues can change after you have children. Women have their children. This changes the menstrual cycle and what our experience is like. When we get close to menopause, women become perimenopausal around, early 40s, mid 40s. That's when the body starts changing. And menopause, of course, is when we no longer are menstruating. And it usually is, if you've not had a menstrual period for 12 months, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to be having any more. And that's considered the end of a normal menopause. But menopause can be brought on by other things. It can be brought on by surgery or some types of illnesses, things like cancer and other forms of illnesses that we go through, and this can bring on an early menopause as well. So these are some of the things that some women go through. So the first issue, like I mentioned, is the issue with the painful periods. Another one is amenorrhea, which is where the periods stop. This can happen, again, due to a number of reasons. It can happen due to huge stress. When I was in around 2021, I went through an incredibly stressful year. So much so, during that period, my cousin in Australia, she had committed suicide. My parents separated. My dad left. Our dog got run over and killed. Like, all of these things happened. And several other things. So I went through huge personal stress. And so much so that my periods stopped, literally. They just stopped. And I noticed a really strange sensation in my tummy, a couple of months, because this is like by month 3, and I thought, okay, this is awfully odd. I knew I wasn't pregnant. I was on the pill, and I tested. certainly wasn't pregnant. So I went to see my gynecologist, and what he found was I had a cyst, and it was about this big. So again, if you have ovarian cysts and things like that, that can be part of the problem. If we, if we go under a certain body weight, our system will actually shut down and stop us menstruating because our body is not viable for carrying life. So if you've lost a lot of weight, women that are anorexic, for example, they generally stop, their whole menstrual cycle stops because they wouldn't be able to survive, remain alive, and carry a child. They're just not physically viable to do so. So our body is very intelligent, and it has the ability to do certain things to help protect us. And like in my case, because I was going through such severe stress, it literally, it shut down. And then, then unfortunately I developed a cyst, but, luckily it was benign or everything like that, which was good. The only issue was it burst on the operating table. And thank God I had a great surgeon. And everything was okay, and after that everything was fine. But this can be part of the reason why we have that loss of our menstrual cycle. Around when we're pregnant, generally we don't have we're not menstruating, so that is something that you would expect. Sometimes women do have a little spotting. If you notice some strange bleeding while you're pregnant, immediately go and see your doctor, immediately go and see your health practitioner. If you have any changes, major changes in your menstrual cycle, always go and see your doctor, always. Generally it's not anything, but you always want to be on top of things. You want to regularly have things like your pap smears and get tested, because again, when we stop menstruating, if it's within your normal healthy menstruating years, it can be indicative of some other health condition other than stress. So it's really important just to just to be on top of it and check, and that way you can prevent any major things happening. The last issue that can happen is something like menorrhagia, which is where you have irregular periods, and that can be where instead of having, generally women have a 28-day cycle, and that cycle corresponds, which is remarkable, it corresponds to the lunar cycles. Our body is incredible, like the rest of nature, and it corresponds to the cycles and rhythms of nature, just like everything else around us. So on average, that's the cycle that women have. Sometimes a little bit less, so it could be 26 to 31 days, for example. But for some women, we find that they have irregular periods. I was somebody that I was regularly irregular. It was a rarity that I had periods every 28 days. So I never really knew when they were coming. It could be 26 days. It could be 35 days. It could be 24 days. It could be 40 days. So I never had, and unless I was on the pill, then of course it was just regular, but you're not even ovulating at that time. So it's not really a real period. So that can be something. You can have that irregular in your cycle length. You can have irregularities in between your menstrual cycle. So you might find that you have some spotting in between the cycle, or you might have bleeding in between the cycle. You might find that the bleeding cycle changes, again, as we get older. Some women develop, as they get closer to menopause, they might experience something known as fibroids, which are little tiny, they're just kind of little tiny growths on the uterine lining. So these fibroids can cause heavier bleeding. And again, as I got older, one of the things that I found was that my bleeding actually did get heavier and heavier, so much so that I became anemic. I was finding that I was just almost constantly bleeding. There was no stopping in between, or it would stop for a few days and then it would start again. It's like, what the hell? So this was something I found. And, some women go through this. I know my mother had incredibly heavy issue, incredible issues with her menstrual cycle. It was so heavy that she went and had a hysterectomy because it was really bad. So some women go through this type of thing. So again, always check with your gynecologist, with your medical care practitioner. And if you're finding that, like with me, they put me on iron pills just because I was anemic, and I was just bleeding so much. So that'll kind of give you there are some of the three main things. And then one of the other things I'd like to address is PMS. PMS can be anything, like I mentioned. You could have pain. You might have swelling in the breasts. They might become tender and uncomfortable. You might experience bloating in the abdominal area. So that could be something. We might find that our elimination changes a little bit. So we might become a little bit more constipated, or in other cases, we tend to go to the toilet more. So all of these things can be part of it. Mood changes. We might find that we become more moody, or we cry more. We feel more emotional. One of the things that happens is, and this is from an Ayurvedic perspective, the channels of our body, they're known as shrotas, so they're very fine channels in our body. As we get close to the time of ovulation, the channels of the body actually open up, and if we don't actually conceive and become pregnant, then of course everything falls away. So what happens is the channels of the body open up so that we can release toxins out of our system. I mean, it is so incredible what our body does. So with that release, and of course there's, from us physically, there's a release of course, the blood and everything that comes away from the uterine lining and everything when we have our menstrual cycle. So we can experience a number of different things. We might feel more fatigue around this time as well. And certainly if you're finding that, especially around the first day, rest. If you've got cramping, then applying warmth to the abdominal area can help, or the lower back. You might find our lower back can be a little bit sore. So these are some of the examples. Our desire for eating food can change. We might find, for some women, they crave sweet things or chocolate or something like that prior to their menstrual cycle. For others, it can be savory things. So these are all some of the things that we experience. So I just wanted to kind of cover what some of you might be experiencing. And I'm sure some of you will be going, yeah, I can relate to this, because, this might be some of the things that you've gone through.
I'm listening, and I know you mentioned about I had an ovarian cyst, and mine was about the size of a grapefruit, which is when you said mine was about that big, and that was about the size of a grapefruit. Yeah. And I went through that. And then, of course, the different forms of birth control that you try over the years, because if you think about historically, the birth control pills and different methods, that they were weaker, they were stronger, and all of these different things. And then like you're saying about the mood changes, you think about women and how strong women really are emotionally, mentally, physically, because of all the things that we do go through with our bodies. And sometimes you would just say, well, gee, it's a wonder that we make it because of the fact that you are going through this. And like you said, if you don't know if it's 28 days or 24 days or sometimes 40 days, because again, many people, I don't know that I've ever met anyone who just said, oh, it's just smooth sailing.
It's
all
perfect.
I just don't know of any people, because again, we all have our different issues. And I think it probably, some people have many pregnancies, some people can't carry a baby full force. And just like you're saying about the people who, if you're underweight, your body literally shuts down because it's saying, well, I can't protect you, and you can't grow a baby because a baby needs
Yeah.
all of these nutrients and everything. So it is really, the fact that we survive, and it is a testament to how our body, you were mentioning about how our bodies kind of go with the natural cycle of the moon, and how all of that works. I mean, we are so dependent on nature, and I think that's a really fascinating part of this. And then PMS, I mean, we've all heard the PMS jokes, about people, but it can be very serious.
Yeah.
About, do you, in your experience in education, have you found that after menopause that if people were suffering from PMS, do they still suffer, or is it?
No, that goes away, because again, the changes in or fluctuations in the hormones, that we have as we're going through menstruation, of course, that stops. We're no longer menstruating. So things like PMS stops. As I was going through, perimenopause, I was very lucky. Women going through menopause sometimes experience all kinds of things, like flashing and flushing and sweating and, all kinds of different things, and dryness of the skin and painful intercourse, and their sex drive changes, or they have no sex drive. They can have things where, again, some emotions do change. For them, it's more empty nester, because it's like, okay, family moves away, life changes. But those type of mood things that you can sometimes have with PMS, that generally goes away. And like what I was saying, when I was, getting close to, I think I was, in the latter part of when I was menstruating, I remember, I hadn't had some periods for a while. And I thought, okay, maybe this is, this is really good. They've stopped. And then I was feeling, emotionally a little bit off one day, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? And then I got my periods. I went, because it had been a while, I'd forgotten what it was like. It was like, oh my God, the PMS. I'd forgotten what this was like. And so that was kind of fascinating to me, because that completely went away, which was really great. Yeah.
Well, so the good news is there is relief, but what if we don't want to wait? What if we don't want to wait?
Yeah, we don't want to wait for 40 years. I wonder why.
what other complementary or alternative programs or medicine is there for people? Because again, like you mentioned, you were pretty young when you had that ovarian cyst. You were only like what, 20, 21? And then of course, there's the child, I guess I would call them the childbearing years, when, that's at least another 20 years, or when people are wanting to have children, or they do have children. And then the time when, I guess you called it the perimenopause,
and then final menopause, or menopause, yeah.
But there are so many issues out there, like you were talking about, bleeding so much that you needed iron. Well, that's you were depleted. Think about it. If you have those issues, that creates, other symptoms, because if you're lacking iron, then that's going to cause you're going to be tired. There's all these other, all of a sudden you're off. Your balance is off because of that. And I know you have a lot of information about the complementary and alternatives. So if you can talk about that, that'd be really great.
Yeah. So I was searching for all types of different things, and I have a background in, I studied shiatsu in Chinese medicine, Maharishi Ayurveda. So these were the first avenues that I looked at to help with what, some of the issues I was going through. And I, tried acupuncture, acupressure, herbs. With the Maharishi Ayurveda, I had a number of different amazing treatments, and same thing, took some different herbs. I was able to, because I was a practitioner, I could prescribe my own herbs. And then I became very cognizant of what I was eating, and that really helped. I was always very good about my diet, but I noticed that, if I ate certain things, it seemed to support, my body more than if I ate other things. And certainly, having lots of sugar is not something that really helps us. Obviously, there are times you eat it in moderation, but if you're finding that you're really craving that's that can really deplete our body rather than really support it. So I tried all these different modalities, and looking at being more in tune with nature. With Ayurveda, one of the things, the premises is to use because we are part of nature, is our body is along with those cycles and rhythms. And what can happen is, if we get out of balance in our life, nowadays we're all running almost, for some of us it's 12-hour days, for some of us it's more. So we're just running constantly. We're bombarded with media, we're bombarded with, with our laptops and our cell phones and everything that we're doing. So we get so disturbed in our nervous system that this can create imbalances. And so this is one of the things that pulls our whole physiology out of balance, and that in turn pulls our menstrual cycle out of balance. So by eating in a way that is more nourishing, warming, calming, doing more calming activities, that's something that can help. So I incorporated all of those things, and and that helped to a point, but it didn't help completely. So by divine providence, of course, I met Guruji, and I started getting some blessings from Guruji. This is Guruji Mahendra Trivedi. For people who don't know him, he is the founder of the Trivedi Effect and has a remarkable gift. He's able to harness the energy of creation, life force energy, and then he can harness that energy, transmit it, and then infuse it into people, as well as any other living organisms and non-living materials. So this really is an incredible gift. And I met him in 2011, and one of the most amazing things that I found, as soon as I started getting blessings from Guruji, all my menstrual issues, they went. Literally. I had no more heavy bleeding. I was no longer anemic. PMS disappeared. My periods were I was having very heavy, my periods are very heavy. Probably not as heavy as some people, but really heavy bleeding. And it was like almost no bleeding. It was fantastic. So it completely balanced out my cycle. The other thing, by the time I actually went through menopause myself, the only symptoms I had was I stopped bleeding. That was it. I had no problems sleeping or worrying or sweating or night sweats or any of the other problems that a lot of women have. So I know that was from this amazing energy, and it is able to work at that very deep fundamental level in order to bring that balance and restore the body's natural healing ability. It brings that balance back to all the different systems of the body, including the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is what runs our hormones. So everything to do with our menstrual cycle itself. And so it really helped bring everything back into balance. I never, ever had a painful period ever again after I started getting the energy transmissions. So I found that to be a huge help. Yeah. So that is something that, that you can do or you can have in order to, help you if you suffer from any of these symptoms.
Well, the beauty of that is it's non-invasive, and it's like we were talking about complementary. It complements anything that you may be trying to do. Like you said, you tried to eat right. You went to the doctor and they prescribed you with iron. You obviously were getting regular physicals and regular checkups during your lifetime so that you were on top of these different issues. And despite the fact that, you know, I mean, again, just like what you were saying, sure, they can give you birth control pills or hormone pills,
Yeah.
and those will help to a certain degree. But again, at a certain point, I was kind of laughing to myself because recently I went somewhere and I had a woman who was my roommate, and she didn't know me, but she said to me, she says, well, I'll be your roommate, but I just have to warn you, I have to keep the room really, really cold because I get hot flashes.
Oh my goodness.
And I said to her, I said, well, as long as I have extra blankets, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so because she was going through menopause, she was getting these hot flashes.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking about that because I've heard different people talk about literally going through these, what you were describing, the night sweats, the hot flashes, all of those symptoms of menopause. And then here you are saying, well, after I had the energy transmissions, the only symptom was it stopped. The bleeding stopped.
That was it. Nothing.
And that is, think about how great that is, not to have to go through like sleepless nights.
Because you're sweating all night. Oh my goodness.
Or soaking through. And imagine if you have a partner, or and you're like,
don't come near me.
and they're like, well, but honey, and you're like, oh, I'm too hot, I'm too cold, I'm this and that. So that is really phenomenal. So now you work with people with the energy. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you work with people?
Absolutely. So just like I mentioned, I do these blessings or energy transmissions, and they can be done remotely. In fact, most people receive the energy transmissions remotely. And I have clients all around the world, clients in Australia, clients across the US, clients in South America. So wherever you are in the world, you can receive this energy. It's actually sent directly to your spirit, which is beautiful. And I usually do it at night while you're sleeping. But it doesn't matter what time you receive it, you're still going to get the full benefit of the energy. If people happen to be in Las Vegas, which is where I live, and they want to come for an in-person transmission with me, they can, of course, schedule a time and we can do an in-person transmission as well. So there are the ways that they can do this. And then if somebody is having some issues, what I generally recommend is for them to do at least 3 months of receiving this energy, because then that way you've got it really starting to build up in your system. And of course, when you receive the energy, it's permanent. It's not something that you have it and then it disappears. No. Once you have an energy transmission, that energy is there with you always. But with certain conditions, you may have had problems with your menstrual cycle for 10 years, for 20, 30 years. So it's always good to allow a little bit of time for whatever you've been experiencing to just run its course, because this energy works in a very natural and beautiful way. And like what Tammy said, it's complementary. If you are on any medication that your doctor prescribes for you, then this will naturally complement whatever you are taking, so that it will help mitigate any of the perhaps more negative side effects. Because if you're on anything that's a lot of different medications have side effects. So some people don't experience them, or some people have mild side effects. So this will help support you with those, as well as really boosting your body's ability to restore, repair, rejuvenate. It boosts our immunity and the self-healing properties of the body. So it really helps whatever you're doing.
Well, that's really great. And again, everybody, it's DeziKoster.com, and that's Dezi, and it's DeziKoster. KOSTR.com. And the beautiful thing about Dezi's website is, of course, you can go there and you can read more about Dezi. You can find out more about the science behind the Trivedi effect, the different programs, different health issues that many people have talked about. There's testimonials, there's the frequently asked questions, there's media, and Dezi writes a really good blog. And as a matter of fact, you can go to her website right now and read a very in-depth blog she wrote about the topic that we discussed today. And the blog is called Everything You Need to Know About Menstrual Cycle Disorders. And Dezi, in this blog, she outlines all of the different things we talked about today. So, you know, you can go check it out. And then, of course, you can contact Dezi directly. And it would be something that, you know, if anything rings true to you, or if you've got questions, I definitely think, you know, why not connect and ask Dezi some questions about it? Because if anything, you know, she might be able to give you some answers or maybe direct you in the right direction. And I think the main thing, especially as a woman, it's so cool to know that other people have gone through this and they've found alternative answers than just taking pills or having surgery or all of these things. Again, you know, you go to your doctor and you can find out what you need to do, but at least you can talk to Dezi about this, and she can, you know, maybe, you know, talk to you, and maybe this might be something that you might want to try as a complement to anything else that you're doing. So Dezi, before I let you go, do you have any other comments?
Just, you know, if women have to also have surgery at all, this is something that, again, supports you going through that surgery and your recovery after. So this is something that's really good for that as well. That's something you need to do as part of taking care of yourself. So that's something. And I will be doing another blog about menopause, because every woman goes through menopause as well at some stage. So over the next, within the next month, that will be completed, and that will be up alongside my other one. So you can look out for that one as well. And this way, you've got these resources that you can look at. There's a lot of science in there too. So people that have done scientific research, that's part of these blogs, so that you can see what science is showing in relating to the different disorders. So you're not alone. This is, I'm happy to be a resource for you. And, you know, if you are having any issues with your menstrual cycle, then come and check this out as an alternative and see how this can help you.
Well, thank you so much, Dezi. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. And hey, we talked about a topic that when I was a young girl, you did not talk about. So that's kind of cool. We've come a long way.
We certainly have.
So everybody, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.